and sing. You nasty but you dirty. I went down to St. James Infirmary, saw my baby there.
All right, boys and girls, welcome. That's the sound of the bell, and you know what that means. It is time for another session of the Swing Academy. Welcome. You could have done anything that you wanted to do today, and you've chosen to spend some of your time with me, so I thank you very much. You are listening to the Swing Academy. My name is James Udall. You're listening on jsmradio.com. We are broadcasting out of the great city of Halle an der Saale, Germany, and I am recording out of my new hometown of Syracuse, New York. So I'd like to say hello to everybody in Syracuse, in the greater New York area, and also to our friends and loved ones back in Halle. We do miss you. This week we have a very interesting, well, I hope it's interesting. We have an interesting episode of the Swing Academy. This week's character or subject, this week's subject is a character of jazz. He is an early pioneer of jazz. And in previous Swing Academy sessions, we have focused on somebody who is known as the father of jazz, Buddy Bolden. We have focused on another artist who is considered, if not the one of the inventors of jazz, Jelly Roll Morton. We focused on an innovator of jazz in Louis Armstrong. We did that one last week. We even focused a few weeks ago on somebody that you might call the mentor of jazz, somebody who was a strong mentoring influence over the life of Louis Armstrong, and that was King Oliver. So this week, I was looking for some kind of catchphrase or some kind of moniker to give to this week's character, and what I came up with was the keystone of jazz. And what I mean by that is that this particular individual, his career started, he got his start in the when jazz was still considered ragtime in the early 1900s. It's rumored, or pretty well documented, I guess, that he was first discovered by Buddy Bolden. And Buddy Bolden went to the insane asylum in 1907. So the person, the subject of our Swing Academy this week, he got his start. He was becoming known in the New Orleans jazz scene as early as maybe 1906, 1907. And he then started his own band, and he partnered up with King Oliver, who was another pioneer of early jazz. And they had a band together, and their band was one of the most popular bands in all of New Orleans. King Oliver left, and then this individual brought Louis Armstrong into the band to replace King Oliver. This person has also had other jazz greats like Sidney Bechet in his band. He is said to have mentored Benny Goodman. So I guess why I'm calling him the keystone of jazz is that he spans this linear time between ragtime, early jazz, hot jazz, and then swing, where Benny Goodman kind of picks up, right? So he kind of spans this time frame where all of these jazz legends have crossed his path. And if he's not the keystone of jazz, then he's some kind of a bridge between the ragtime and the old jazz and the swing. And if you haven't guessed by now, we're talking about the legendary jazz trombonist Kid Ory. He was born Edward Ory. He was born in 1886. You'll hear his biography story a little bit later. I'm not going to go into that right now. But we haven't this is the first trombonist that we've highlighted in the Jazz Academy. We've done composers, pianists. We've done cornetists, trumpet players. And we really haven't focused yet on a trombonist. And I think it's only appropriate that we begin with Kid Ory, because I don't think before Kid Ory there was really what we would call a jazz trombonist. He was kind of one of the first out of the gate. He was definitely an innovator. There's a style of trombone that they call the tailgate style, which he pioneered that too. He had a very long career. His career started, as I said, he was discovered as a young trombone player by Buddy Bolden in 1905 or 6, maybe 7. And he retires, he's active until the late 50s. So you're talking about a 50-year career. And then there were times after he retired that, some of his buddies, like Louis Armstrong, would bring him out of retirement for one-off gigs. And I do have some of those recordings coming up for us today. I've tried to span the career with the recordings that I've located and I'm going to play today. I've tried to span the whole career of Kid Ory. Even though he was active for so long, there was a really notable gap in his career. Sometime around when the Great Depression was starting to really kick in and hit full force, maybe sometime around 1932 or 1933. I think because the swing era was starting to kick into high gear and music became music was meant to be danceable and you had big bands. Somehow Kid Ory takes a break from music. So from what I read, somewhere from the early 1930s, let's say 32, 33, until maybe 1943, 1944, there was a break. He's not performing, he's not recording, he's out of the public eye, he's not doing one-off performances, he's not on the radio. He might, maybe some of his recordings are on the radio, but he's not performing on the radio. In fact, during this 10-year hiatus, he is partnered with his brother, and they're running a chicken ranch, of all things. So it's not even show business or music related. Somehow he makes a comeback in the early 40s, maybe 43, 44. And the research that I've done says that his style of music, which was the old jazz style, the hot jazz from the teens and the 20s, this music had a resurgence of popularity. big band and swing died out, during the war. And it never really came back. In its place came a style of music called bebop, and bebop, I think, was one of those things that you either loved it or hated it. It was kind of more music for musicians rather than music for listeners or dancers. It's my simple interpretation. So there was this yearning to go back to what jazz was in the teens and the 20s. And because Kid Ory was a name from back then, they, his style made a comeback. And then he had a very prosperous career, a second half of his career in the 40s and the 50s. And like I said, even during one-offs in the 1960s. I don't know what else I can say, except that Kid Ory's career seems to be intertwined with that of Louis Armstrong. Louis Armstrong was one of the major players that Kid Ory collaborated with. Kid Ory is on a lot of the recordings that Louis Armstrong made, especially during the sessions that are known as the Hot Five, where Louis Armstrong had this band called the Hot Five from 1925 roughly to 1927, and he, Kid Ory was a major component of that band. But in other pieces that I've uncovered, you have Kid Ory with Louis Armstrong. So there's going to be some pieces you hear where maybe Louis Armstrong is on the trumpet and maybe even the vocals. And you're going to say, well, I thought this show was about Kid Ory. Well, it is. Kid Ory is playing the trombone with the band, on the front line of the band. So I think that there was, these two, Louis Armstrong and Kid Ory, were very, they were collaborators and they liked to work together. But that wouldn't be the only great name you would see on a list of collaborators with Kid Ory. He collaborated with just about any of the who's who's you'd like to name of the 1920s, teens, and then later in the 40s and 50s. I found internet pages and pages of recordings with, attributed to Kid Ory. He was a band leader, and his band that came to prominence in the 20s and the teens was called the Creole Jazz Band. So it was Kid Ory and the Creole Jazz Band. But he wasn't a singer like, for example, Louis Armstrong. So he wasn't, I don't think that there was this crossover ability that like Louis Armstrong had, where Louis he did some acting, but he did singing and he played his trumpet and he was a band leader. I think Kid Ory, basically just focused on the music and on his instrument of choice, which was we're talking about the trombone. So the other thing is that what I've put together the show, besides highlighting Kid Ory, I've put a few pieces in here about jazz trombone. I mean, of all the instruments in the jazz ensemble, I guess the most mysterious to me somehow is the trombone. I don't know why. It's just something I've never really focused on or chose to learn about. So I've got some interesting recordings about the history of the trombone with respect to jazz and the tailgate style, and a few little vignettes, I guess, little recordings of prominent modern trombone artists talking about their instrument. Because I don't think you can really appreciate Kid Ory, his career or his music, without coming to some understanding about the instrument that he played. So we've got that lined up. Like I said, the show should go about 90 minutes. I'm going to be very careful today and try not to go overtime. I know that I always say that, but we'll try to make that happen. At the very end of the show, I've also put together, we've done this in other Swing Academy sessions, I've put together Swing Academy exam. I've put together a musical examination. So I've got a recorded piece of music from Kid Ory, by Kid Ory. And I have found other artists, especially other artists that he's collaborated with, who did the recording, who recorded the same piece of music. And so what I've done is, in past shows, I've strung all of these recordings together and kind of mix them together intermittently, and we'll see. You should, because most of these musicians have been subjects of past Swing Academy sessions. I'm hoping that you can hear their piece of the music and identify them, and you can say, "Oh, that was just by so and so. Oh, and that this now is by this other artist." So what I hope that we can do is we'll listen to this piece of music that I've edited and mixed together, and I'm hoping that you all can identify the musician and their style and their instrument. So we'll talk a little bit more about the exam as we go further. But even though I'm doing, I'm here guiding the Swing Academy session, I'm not your professor. I am not a teacher. I do not have a music degree. I am not a professional musician nor a jazz historian. I am just somebody who simply loves this genre of music. About 8 or 9 weeks ago, I was able to pick up a radio broadcasting microphone, and I've been able to put these shows together. What this is a journey of music learning. So you're just coming along on this journey that I am on to learn more about jazz and swing, to learn more about these legendary artists, to be able to identify more than just one or two pieces of their music, that you could identify, 8, 9, 12 pieces of their music, that we're going deep into their discography. We're going deeper into the story, and we're learning about their connection to one another. Like these first 7, well, we're on the 7th episode. These first 7 sessions of the Swing Academy, these first 7 characters, I've tried to show that they're all interconnected. One, it's like linear. It's one leads to another, and many of them collaborated with each other. And you can hear, like especially on this evening's show, where I've mixed that Swing Academy exam music piece that I just talked about, you can hear the progression of the music from from early jazz and even ragtime, again up through the swing, and I've even included a couple modern renditions of the song that I've chosen. So I think it's fascinating that you can. It's one thing to read about the history. It's another thing to listen to it, and you can hear it progress and how it's changed. And I find that fascinating. So again, I'm not your teacher. I'm not your professor. I'm just merely on a journey. And if you want to take the journey with me, I invite you to do so. And thank you for being here again. So before I start the show, really, let me just do some housekeeping here. You are listening to the Swing Academy. We're on jsmradio.com. You can reach me by email. My email address is james.udall at jsmradio.com. You can email me anything that you like, suggestions for a future show, like a subject of a future Swing Academy. I'm open to critiques. I am open to criticism. If you want to tell me, even if you like the show, if you want to be nice, you can do that too. So james.udall at jsmradio.com. You can also reach out to me on my Facebook page. My Facebook page is just simply, my account is my name, James Udall. So you can reach me on Facebook. I have a public page. It's easy to find, and I'd be happy to talk to you or interact with you on Facebook. Also, the radio station has a Facebook page. So it's called Jazz Swing Manouche Radio, and you can find them on Facebook as well. There's it's a nice group of people. There's about 800 or 900 followers on that page, and they all share a love of music. I publish my previews of my shows, my show schedule on that Facebook page. So if you want to follow me, either through my Facebook page or through the JSM Radio page. Also, you can just go to jsmradio.com. The radio station has their weekly schedule, what kind of music is coming up at certain hours on certain days. The music is free. It's also commercial free, which I find to be very, I think that's great. That the music is just 24/7, commercial free, all jazz, all swing, all manouche, all the time. So do check out the radio station's webpage. And finally, if you miss the real-time shows, so these shows are broadcast at specific times on the radio station, but if you miss a show or you would like to go to a past show and where are the archived shows, you can find my shows and other shows of JSM Radio on the Mixcloud app. So www.mixcloud.com. You can search JSM Radio. You can search The Swing Academy. You can search, also I have another show, a Sunday show called Hermlinville Swingtown Calling. So you can find all of the archives there. And, if you're liking the swing, if this is your first or second time listening to the Swing Academy, you can definitely catch up with the other artists, beginning with session number 1. So with that, I'm going to thank you all one more time for being here. Stay with us. We've got a lot of information coming, some great music. And without any further ado, let me give you the keystone of jazz. The innovator of jazz trombone and jazz legend, Kid Ory.
C'est la misère, ma palais, la cour suprême, on laisse agir la laitier. Société finie pour nous casser donc à bas.
Commandant, mon temps de frère, que ton conseil, il est affreux. J'aime mieux fondre la terre, de offenser mes deux yeux. Une blanche à être fou, mon année, pas tout couteau. Une blanche à être fou, mon année, pas tout couteau.
Of course, all jazz men didn't come from New Orleans. We're in Laplace, Louisiana, in front of the Woodland Plantation. And it was around here that the first important trombonist in jazz grew up, and his name was Edward Ory. Kid Ory wasn't born in that house. His father was of the wealthy plantation-owning and at one time slave-owning Ory family of St. John the Baptist Parish. His name was Azame Ory, but his friends called him John. His mother was named Octave Devazan, and she was a Creole of color. They had 13 kids together, 7 of them lived, and the third youngest was Kid Ory. As a result of his father taking up with this woman of a different race, he was ostracized by his family and spent most of his life living in small buildings like this one on the outskirts of the Woodland Plantation. They all worked in the sugarcane business, and Ory's earliest experiences were working as a water boy during the sugarcane harvest. This convinced him of one thing. He had no interest in working in the plantation. He got a bunch of friends on the plantation together and they made their own instruments. After a few years, they saved up money and bought real instruments, and by 1905, Ory had settled on the trombone. Ory put together a band called the Woodland Band, named after the plantation. It was made up of kids he had grown up with. They played to earn a few extra cents here and there, but most of them supported themselves by working in the sugarcane fields. But the appeal of the big city and the fame and fortune that they were convinced awaited them there was too much. And by 1910, the Woodland Band relocated to New Orleans. He had visited here a few times in the early part of the 1900s. He bought his first trombone in 1905 and came back to his sister's house here on Jackson Avenue to try it out, and that's when he met Buddy Bolden. And Buddy Bolden was clearly one of his main influences early on. By 1910, his entire band was here, and by 1913, he was living in this house behind us at 2135 Jackson Avenue. In 1910, when Kid Ory comes to New Orleans, his band is made up of kids from the plantation. But in the following years, his groups will be made up of future jazz stars like Louis Armstrong, King Oliver, Johnny Dodds, and Sidney Bechet. And with Ory's band, jazz crosses over from simply the music of black honky-tonks to the music of the moment. Everybody's listening to it. When a white debutante is having her debut, she says, "Daddy, I must have the Kid Ory band." One of the people who really cut their teeth in Ory's band was King Oliver. Ory says when he met King Oliver, Oliver was all wet. His tone was bad. He was just playing loud. Well, eventually Oliver and Ory throw their lot in together, and it becomes the Ory Oliver Band. And they become the hottest band in the city. Here on Dryde Street, we see the home of Joe King Oliver, the mentor of Louis Armstrong and the leader of King Oliver's Creole Jazz Band. Louis Armstrong used to visit King Oliver here, and he always loved the big piles of red beans that his wife Stella would fix for him. They always knew that Joe Oliver was home because when he snored at his bedroom window there, the windows rattled. It's important to point out and remember that jazz in 1915 is not an esoteric listening music. It's dance music. It's occasional music. Whether you're playing in the streets for a second line parade, or if you're playing at a country club for the Blue Bloods of society, it's for dancing. And the music always had to inspire people to want to move their feet.
Edward Kid Ory, born in Woodridge Plantation near La Platte, Louisiana in 1886. In his early years, he actually played the banjo. He started playing music very, very young, probably so young that his mouth had not grown to the point that he could actually play a trombone. And of course, like everyone else, he started out on one of those Civil War era trombones. By the time he had moved into New Orleans, he lived on Jackson Street, and he had one of those brand new modern trombones. Young kid just practicing, and one day walks up Mr. Buddy Bolden, King Buddy Bolden, and immediately he wanted to hire this young kid to play in his band. So you can say that Kid Ory was the first trombone shorty, so to speak, yeah. Except his sister said, no, I'm not letting my little brother go out there and play with you grown men. He might learn some bad habits, get him away from here. So Kid Ory just kept on practicing. But somewhere in 1910 or so, he did start bands around New Orleans, Storyville, I am sure. And he had great bands with people like Joe Oliver and Noonan and the Dodge Brothers, and even Louis Armstrong was in his band for a while. Somewhere around 1919, this is a couple years after Storyville had closed, he got a little disenchanted with New Orleans and thought he would seek greener pastures. He knew about what was developing out on the West Coast, so his next stop was LA. Showed up in LA about 1919, and he had his Creole orchestra out there because Kid Ory was a French-speaking Creole. He walked the walk and talked the talk, so to speak. So he surrounded himself with other New Orleans musicians out there, and he had this particular way of doing business. He paid a record company to record him, and then he bought the pressings from them, and he released his recordings on his own label, Ory Sunshine Orchestra, and then he had them distributed through one record store in town in LA. That way he controlled the ebb and flow of the money. He had good business sense. He was also very, very loyal. A lot of musicians who recorded with him on those original recordings, Society Blues and Ory's Creole trombone, somewhere around 1920 or so, they stayed with him late into his career. Somewhere around 1925, he became disenchanted again, a little restless, and he went from LA to Chicago and joined that Chicago jazz scene that was really, really busting with the great migration that was taking place from the north to the south. And there he reunited with King Oliver and all of the people he knew, and he worked his way up. He played with King Oliver, he played with Bessie Smith and Ma Rainey, he played with the Dodd Brothers, and he even played with Louis Armstrong for a while. He was a very ambitious guy, and evidently he was well liked because everybody wanted to play with him. Fine, fine musician, fine, fine gentleman. He hung out there, did a great job. Around the 40s, there was a rebirth of this resurgence of this early jazz music as a kind of reaction to bebop. Bebop was this real strange stuff, and a lot of people wanted to get back to the traditional jazz. Well, there was Kid Ory, so he had a great resurgence in the 40s, and some of his original band members from the 1910s in New Orleans were still playing with him in the 40s. This guy lived until 1973. And in that time, while he was in Chicago, he was a great mentor to the young Benny Goodman and many other musicians from Chicago who were trying to figure out this jazz. And once he moved to New York, he was a great friend and mentor to a lot of jazz musicians, including a very young Charles Mingus. So Kid Ory is one of the greatest of the great, had a very, very long career. And what is very special to me is he created the tailgate trombone style. I'm a trombone player. And that tailgate slide is all about the guy sitting on the back of the wagon or whatever, so he could move that slide in and out, do his glissandos and rips and all that, and also play this very rhythmic counter rhythm to the melody in all the early New Orleans jazz type music. Most people think he developed that particular trombone style based on his experience as a rhythmic player on the banjo as a very, very young man. Edward Kid Ory, legend, great musician, and mentor to so many for so many years. Thank you.
You are listening to the Swing Academy on jsmradio.com. My name is James Udall, and it is my pleasure to be here with you this afternoon or this evening, depending on where you are in the world. I understand that over 10 countries tune in to my broadcasts every week, and that is a great honor. So thank you for being here. Thank you for sticking with me. We've got some more music coming up, and we've got the Swing Academy exam. We got the big exam, so don't tune out before then. Okay, so thanks a lot, and I hope you're enjoying the show.
Hi, my name is Vincent Gardner, trombonist for the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about New Orleans jazz. New Orleans was a special place for music at the turn of the last century. A major port city, it was home to many different types of people, each of whom had their own style of music. New Orleans had a great tradition of celebration, opera, military marching bands, folk music, the blues, different types of church music, ragtime, echoes of traditional African drumming, and all of the dance styles that went with this music could be heard and seen throughout the city. When all of those kinds of music blended into one, jazz was born. Some of the aspects of jazz from New Orleans include the Big Four rhythm. A front line of horns, as you see here, and the sound of collective improvisation, where each instrument lends a unique character and role to the music. 1, 2, Some of the founding fathers of jazz are Buddy Bolden, King Oliver, Jelly Roll Morton, and Louis Armstrong. These were some of the greatest musicians to come out of New Orleans, and their music and performances remain some of the finest art this country has produced. We're going to play the classic spiritual, When the Saints Go Marching in the style of New Orleans jazz.
Hello, my name is Chris Washburn, and today I'm going to talk to you about the trombone and jazz history, and how the trombone found its way into be such a prominent instrument in jazz. Now, this instrument that you see here was developed in 1475 by Hans Neuschel of Nuremberg, Germany, and it became a very important instrument in a variety of settings in Europe. In particular, because the trombone has the range of the human voice, and also the trombones come in bass, tenor, alto, and soprano to match the ranges of the human voice, they were typically used in churches and religious settings to double the voices to keep everybody on key and on pitch. At the same time, though, the trombone has this vocal quality. It also has a loud and boisterous quality. And so it was oftentimes used in marching bands, in military bands, and for a variety of street parties. So kind of the two extremes of human experience, let's say, the heavenly and the hellish. When classical composers started to bring the trombone into classical music in concert settings, the first times that they would bring them in is oftentimes to represent thunder or the voice of the devil. This was the case with Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. The trombones are there to represent thunder. Or it could be like Mozart's Requiem, where again we were doubling voices and being very angelic. But it was really because of the role that trombones played in municipal brass bands and marching bands is the way that it kind of found itself in jazz settings and early jazz settings. Because street parades and marching bands were really important, especially in New Orleans and, well, throughout the United States at the turn of the century into the early 20th century. And so what we got was that when early jazz bands started to form, they oftentimes adopted some of that instrumentation from those brass bands. So you'd have the trumpets or the cornets playing the lead melodies. You would have clarinets playing a counter melody, or sometimes what they call an obligato, which would be ornaments on top of the trumpets and around the trumpet melody lines. And then the trombones would play supportive roles and play another kind of counter melody to support those different melodies. Something happened in New Orleans, though, at the beginning of the last century, where if you see early pictures of brass bands, they oftentimes had trombones with valves on them. This was preferable in marching bands because if you're marching around on a street and you have somebody with a slide trombone, it can get kind of dangerous. But with the valve trombones, you didn't have the problem with hitting people. But someone started to bring in more slide trombones in New Orleans, and early improvisers and jazz musicians really enjoyed the fact that you could slide and scoop and sound like the human voice, like this. And that style of playing became known as tailgate trombone. And the reason it was called tailgate trombone is that when bands would compete with each other to try to get gigs on the weekends, they would oftentimes go on a trailer, be pulled around by horses, and go around the streets and try to gather the biggest crowd around them. And whoever would get the most followers would get the most gigs. But the trombone, even on a trailer, had this problem of hitting the other musicians. So they'd oftentimes put the trombone at the tailgate, put the gate down, and they would play over that gate so they wouldn't hit anybody with these glissandi and glisses. And so that's one of the early styles of trombone and why it became so important, especially in early jazz or Dixieland or New Orleans jazz settings. The trombone continues throughout jazz history to play a variety of different roles, many in the same way that we see supportive roles in a symphony orchestra. In a big band, oftentimes the trombones play to support, they provide the harmony. They also can be lead instruments and solo instruments because we can mimic the human voice. And one of the things that we get in jazz which separates jazz music from other styles is that improvisers are oftentimes encouraged to sound vocal-like and to kind of adopt different vocal styles. So what early jazz musicians started to do is use a combination of the slide and also with various tongue techniques to create a variety of emotions and vocal-like emotions on the trombone. Here's a good example. I'm going to gliss, and I'm also going to do this with my tongue, and it's going to come out as a growl. And it was because of this quality, good support, also vocal qualities of the trombone, that ensured that the trombone would play an important part in jazz for the years to come.
Now we have a little tiger rag. Why don't you do what Ory say? Why don't you do what Ory say? Well, if you don't like the way I do, what did Ory say? Well, what did Ory say? Well, if you don't like the way I do, just Pino. Yes, let's do what Ory say. Why don't you do what Ory say? Why don't you do what Ory say? Well, if you don't like the way I do, well, what did Ory say? Well, what did Ory say? Well, if you don't like the way I do, just Pino. Why don't you do what Ory say? Why don't you do what Ory say? Well, if you don't like the way I do, what did Ory say? Well, what did Ory say? Well, if you don't like the way I do, just Pino. Yes, let's do what Ory say. Why don't you do what Ory say? Why don't you do what Ory say? Well, if you don't like the way I do, well, what did Ory say? Well, what did Ory say? Well, if you don't like the way I do, just Pino.
All right, this next recording I've got dates, I think, to 1962. It's one of the one-off collaborations that I mentioned that Kid Ory did after his retirement, and you're going to see right off the bat that he is doing a little special thing with Louis Armstrong. What was interesting to me about this recording is it brought back a lot of my childhood memories, especially of Disneyland, because this is a recording that was originally made for television. It's highlighting the grand opening of the Mark Twain Riverboat in the New Orleans Square section of Disneyland. So, you know, I think Disneyland in California was built in 1955, so this is 1962. So the park is expanding, and they've invited Louis Armstrong, Kid Ory, and some other jazz legends to play live on television on the Mark Twain Riverboat as it goes around the, I think it's called the Rivers of America, in that section of Disneyland. So anyway, this little thing, it's about 10 minutes long. It brought back some really fond memories of my childhood, because I did grow up in Southern California and was fortunate enough to spend quite a bit of time at Disneyland. But Kid Ory is the one of the songs performed in this little piece was a song written by King Ory. It's called Muskrat Ramble, and anyway, it's a fun little number. And anyway, I hope you enjoy it. We are running short of time. I think that I might go a little bit over, so apologies in advance. After this piece of music, or this little recording, we'll go into the examination part of the Swing Academy. So I hope you stick with me. We'll see you on the back end of this next recording. Louis Armstrong, Kid Ory at Disneyland, 1962, on the Mark Twain Riverboat, sailing the rivers of America. Enjoy it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Armstrong.
You're welcome. Ah, that's my kind of music. Up the lazy river, where the old river runs. Up the lazy river, with the noonday sun, lingering in the shade of a kind old tree. Throw away your troubles, dream a dream of me, dream a dream of me. Up the lazy river, where the robin song, two bright lights as we stroll along. Blue skies up above, the one I love. Up the lazy river, how happy we will be. Oh, up the lazy river, big bug, bad sad, booze, bad news, that. Papa don't do dilly, but do hey, yes, oh yes. But that do not decide, but that thing was all. But they, Papa don't miss those sit, blended don't do, Papa don't decide. Boy, if I rip it this evening. Yet the nose is not says, Papa don't hear. Yes, my love, up the lazy river. Oh, you river, you river, Ah, my kind of horn, too. Yeah, you hear that? What do you say, Daddy?
Wonderful, it's wonderful.
Oh, man.
That's it. Just think of it. Imagine you being on the Mark Twain, and welcome.
Yes, thank you.
I know this seems like old times to you, don't it?
It sure
huh?
does.
Yeah, you look good, too, man.
And with Johnny Sincere,
Yes.
Kid Ory, who played with me in one of my swinging groups called Hot Five.
Yes.
Oh, that was the day.
Yeah.
We didn't make much money, but we had so much fun.
Yeah, but the rent was cheap, too, Daddy.
Well, you know, along about that time, Johnny St. Cyr was playing banjo in New Orleans when the blues was born.
Well, I was there to help to deliver it. And since all the cats are here, let's recreate. Bus Red Rumble. That tune is really a gasser. And you know one thing, folks? Kid Ory wrote that tune.
Say, Louie, how about doing some parading down Old Bourbon Street?
Well, okay. Let us all take some. Yeah. We're gonna rock this old Mark Twain right on down to New Orleans. drive down to New Orleans. That city, those pretty historic scenes. I'll take you for a review down Bourbon Street. Oh, there'll be a lot of hot spots. You'll see little big shots down on Bourbon Street. Yeah.
Let's fly down.
Yeah.
Or drive down.
Yeah.
To New Orleans.
Oh, New Orleans.
That city.
That's it, yeah.
So pretty.
Yeah, that's right.
With all its historic scenes. I'll take you. I'm gonna parade you. Down Bourbon Street. Say you'll see lots of hot spots. Dig all them big shots. Way down on Bourbon Street. Let's fly down. Or drive down to New Orleans. That city sure is pretty.
Ain't it okay?
With its historic scene.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So I'm gonna take you.
Take me where?
I'll parade you. Cross down Bourbon Street. Say we'll see a lot of hot spots. Dig all them big shots. Way down in New Orleans.
All right, everybody, I hope you're ready for this week's Swing Academy exam. I don't think it will be too difficult, but I do think it will be challenging, and I hope you find that it's fun. We are in serious danger of going overtime, so I do apologize. We might go 5-10 minutes over my allotted time. So thank you for sticking with me so far. I hope you enjoyed the show. It's really been fun learning about Kid Ory and the trombone and his influence on jazz, as I've been referring to him as the keystone of jazz. So let's see if that moniker sticks. If it does, you heard it here first. So you might be asking, okay, what is the exam about? So what I've done is I've taken the piece of music called St. James Infirmary. That's one of my favorites, by the way. And you heard it earlier when we were doing some of the music of Kid Ory. So we've played Kid Ory's version of St. James Infirmary. So what I've also done is I've taken samples of other jazz and swing artists, and a couple modern artists too, of the same piece of music, St. James Infirmary. What I really like about this era of music is that so many artists covered the same piece of music and did it in their style. So this exercise, even if you don't do well on the actual examination, it will show you the progression of music, how it's progressed over time and yet kept true to its roots. So what I've done is I've taken St. James Infirmary, I've taken snippets of all these different artists, and we're on episode number 7 of the Swing Academy. So Kid Ory's number 7. And then I've had 6 other Swing Academy sessions. So the other 6 artists that we focused on in the past few weeks are included in this exam. So you're going to hear the Kid Ory version. You're going to hear the other 6 artists that we've done in the Swing Academy. Hopefully, by listening to those Swing Academy sessions, you recognize their style and the sound of their instrument. I've also thrown in a couple swing era artists that we haven't covered yet, but they're well known. There shouldn't be any trouble identifying them. And then I've thrown in, just for good measure, some very modern interpretations. I've got an interpretation of St. James Infirmary from the 1960s. I've got a St. James Infirmary interpretation from the late 90s, early 2000s. And then I have a modern retro interpretation of St. James Infirmary, which was just performed a few months ago in Berlin, Germany. So let me see if I can get these artists straight. So in no particular order, I've mixed renditions of St. James Infirmary by Earl Hines, Sidney Bechet, Benny Goodman, Django Reinhardt, Kid Ory, King Oliver, Louis Armstrong, Cab Calloway, the White Stripes, the Swingin' Hermlins, and Joe Cocker. So, listen to this piece of music, listen to this mix, this mashup, whatever you want to call it. See if you can identify which piece belongs to which of those artists. So again, on a piece of paper, I'm going to give you the names of the artists. So I'll give you about 10 seconds to get a piece of paper, something to write with, a pencil, a pen. So write down the names of these artists, and then your exam or your quiz will be to put the number of the number in the sequence in this piece of music where that artist fit. So again, in no particular order, we've got an Earl Hines, Sidney Bechet, Cab Calloway, Django Reinhardt, Benny Goodman, Kid Ory, Louis Armstrong, King Oliver, the Swingin' Hermlins, Joe Cocker, and the White Stripes. So those should be the names on your paper. As you hear this piece of music, write down where in the sequence you heard. If you want to email me your results, what you wrote down, send me an email to the station, james.udall@jsmradio.com. I'd be happy to grade your exam or quiz, whatever we want to call it. So I wish you luck. Here comes the music, and I will catch you on the back end of the exam. Maybe we'll have time for one more piece of music and we'll say goodbye. Okay? So I wish you a lot of luck, and we'll catch you on the back end.
Went down to St. James Infirmary. Saw my baby there. Stretched on a long white table. So sweet, so cold, love air.
Let her go, God bless her. No matter where she may be, you can search this whole wide all over. But she never found the great big flounder-faced man exactly like me.
When I die, bury me in my straight-leg breeches. Put on a box-back coat and a Stetson hat. Put a $20 gold piece on my watch chain, so you can let all the boys know I died standing pat. Then give me 6 crap-shooting pallbearers.
Story. Oh, boy, give you the summer blues, and you tell them I got the sunshine to frame me blue.
All right, everybody, how do you think you did on the exam? I hope you did well. If you want to check your results, you want to get the answers, please email me here at the station, james.udall@jsmradio.com. We are going to be about 10 minutes over time. I do apologize. I have one more song by Kid Ory lined up. I believe it's called Farewell to Storyville. So we'll use this as our farewell song this week. I really want to thank you for stopping by and hanging out with me today, learning about Kid Ory, learning about the trombone, taking the exam. I hope you come back next Thursday. So every Thursday you can find the Swing Academy at jsmradio.com. 8 p.m. Berlin, 9 p.m. New York, 6 p.m. for my friends on the West Coast. So we're doing this every week, and I hope you will make your way back. So I'm going to say farewell to you with the song Farewell to Storyville, and there's only one more thing to say, and that's keep swinging.
Thank you.